All right, it is another wonderful time on television, and many thanks for joining us again on our program, African Discourse, on independent television. My name is Evan Sunokogie. Well, today on the show, we are going to be looking at the 80th edition of the United Nations General Assembly. As we speak, we understand that the event has kick-started this morning. It's going to be a one-week-long event, and our own president, actually left the country yesterday. And in the early hours of this morning, we understand that his presidential aircraft touched down in New York, in the United States of America, where he's going to be representing the president. And he's going to be delivering the Nigeria's national statement and also representing the country in various forms. So what we're going to be doing here today is going to be looking at the 80th edition of the United Nations General Assembly in New York, and the prospect it holds for African nations, and of course, as our Vice President attends the 80th edition of the UNGA. Well, to look at all this this afternoon, we are so privileged to have erudite personality and people that knows their onions when it comes to international affairs. Please join me to welcome very close to my left, Professor Victor Igbenedion, a professor of vocational and technical education. So you're welcome to the program African Discourse.
Thank you for having me.
And also the Deputy Vice Chancellor of the University of Benin, Professor Ayinde Buyinami Adeshina. I don't know if I got the names correctly now, but I know that there's an Ayinde, there's a Buyinami, and of course there's an Adeshina in the name. So you're welcome to the program African Discourse.
Good afternoon, everyone.
No.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. And also to my erudite friend, somebody that he delights himself in discussing international affairs, Derek Huango is joining us virtually from Benin this afternoon on the same program, on the same topic. Mr. Derek Huango, nice to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. Very good day to you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I want to say thank you because I know it's a very tight schedule for you, but you found time to be on the program this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So in an attempt to compensate for the efforts that you are putting onto this program this afternoon, so we're going to be looking at the 80th edition of UNGA. That's the United Nations General Assembly in New York, whereby African leaders, some African leaders are going to be attending that event. Our own Vice President left yesterday, and he's going to be representing the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. As I said a while ago, that his presidential aircraft touched down in New York City this morning. Now, what do you think is going to be the major pullouts from this edition of UNGA? I mean, we're looking at the 80th edition, and of course, it's also the 80th anniversary of the United Nations General Assembly. What do you think is going to be the major pullouts for African nations? Let's start from you.
Well, over the years, Africa and African nations have been clamoring for a permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council, wherein only 5 permanent members exist in the UN Security Council, comprising France, China, Russia, United States, and United Kingdom. And these were the original members that whose interest was put into consideration, in my own opinion, while forming the United Nations. And the United Nations that was established in the year 1945, June 26th, and came into, the charter was implemented, but it came into effect in October 24th, 1945. And if you look at the composition of the United Nations, comprising 6 main organs, the body comprises 6 main organs, which is the Secretariat, the General Assembly, the Economic and Social Council, the International Court of Justice, the Security Council, and then what's the last one, and the system organ. You will realize that these 5 nations who are the trustee of this body I mentioned earlier, the sole purpose of UN appears to be for their own benefit and for them to be able to come together in order to avoid any form of conflict, as it were, in the Second World War, having emerged victorious over Germany, Japan, and a few other countries. So, African nations and a few other nations all over the world were brought into the picture in order for them to consolidate their power. But this is not the main issue here. The main issue here, if you ask me, is that Africa have been clamoring for a permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council. And it will interest you to note that no member, no country in the whole of Africa is represented in the permanent seat, whereas there are 10 other non-permanent members who rotate their positions every other year, as the case may be. But Africa have not been able to be really represented on a permanent scale. And this is not good for us. The United Nations, which is a body, if you ask me again, in my opinion, an economic body for the benefit of the Western countries, ought to by now have evolved and done a little, harmonization of all other member countries in order for them to shift grants a little bit so that other people can have a sense of belonging. Because currently, the same nations that make up the permanent member of the Security Council are the people that are also disturbing the peace of the world. Currently, you and I know that Israel and America are one and the same. Israel and UK, until recently, we also one and the same. And Israel appears to be a pawn, a tool that the US uses to some extent shake up the peace of the Middle East in order for them to have a very strong grip, continuous strong grip on international diplomacy. And you can see how they've been able to corner the world in terms of mineral resources, in terms of other economic benefits that is accruable to them, to the extent that today the US dollar still remains almost the only currency that is being used in international trade. And every other attempt for other nations to come together by way of BRICS and any other affiliation to also, try to have their own independence in terms of economics have been resisted by the so-called powers that be of Europe and America, comprising France, the United Kingdom, and the United States of America. And this UN appear to benefit the America, the UK, and France much more than even China and Russia, who are also members. Because before now, until China was able to, through very soft diplomacy, I also have a grip on the natural resources of countries like continents like Africa. US, France, and the United Kingdom were the monopolists in terms of natural resources of the world. So I don't see any benefits accruable to Nigeria in this 80th General Assembly of the United Nations, because until the UN realizes that Africa has a population of 1.5 billion people and they ought to have a voice, a permanent seat in the Security Council of the United Nations, we ought not to take them serious. Yeah, it is important that we attend, no doubt, but would you attend and see how we can also continue to lend our voice for the interest of Africa to be heard and implemented? Until then, I don't see any, good thing, practical thing, economic benefit coming from that angle, except for AIDS and other non-effective, economic tools that even serve, to also draw Nigeria backward. Because it is through the United Nations that economic entities like the IMF, International Monetary Fund, the Paris Club, and what have you, also came on board for an attempt to continue to make Africa a servant at the international community. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Derek Umago. Now, it's you know, a known fact that for a very long time, the issue of non-African nation being a member of the Security Council of the United Nations has been a long-age discussion. There's no doubt about that. So at this 80th edition, if it comes up again, well, little wonder how and whether an African nation will make it to the United Nations Security Council. Well, away from that now, gentlemen on set, we understand that the Nigeria's vice president is going to be delivering a national development statement, you know, by today at the reception of the UNGA 80th edition. Now, what kind of statements are we looking at? Because this edition is very, very important. I mean, it is the 80th edition. For around 80 years now, the United Nations General Assembly has been held. So what are we looking at? Nigeria's developmental statement by the Vice President, Professor Victor Igbenedion. What do you think he's going to be saying?
I have to look at the theme from the. You have to look at what he's going to say within the context of the theme of this United Nations General Assembly. And the theme is better together, 80 years and more peace, and move for peace, development, and human rights. When is my country speaking? And you have just said, our country is speaking today, so to speak. So within that context, you see, we cannot just talk outside the context. We're talking about peace, development, and human rights. So I expect that Nigeria will speak within that context. For example, we are challenged on all fronts by insecurity,
Issues, yeah.
banditry, and all that. So those are issues that are burning. We are not very comfortable in this country at all because the life is very cheap. It can be snuffed out of the human beings from the north, from the east, from the south. So, and we will need the cooperation of the United Nations General Assembly. And we know their purpose, is the main policy making organ and deliberative policy making organ and representative organ of the United Nations. So there, all the matters within the purview of this theme, they are going to be discussed.
Okay.
And I believe that Nigeria will be able to key into the areas that are dear to them. As I said before, we talk about security and human rights. These are burning issues in the country that we must talk about. I talked about human rights violation. It's something that must be definitely approached.
Okay. All right. So away from that now, because our major concern, you know, at the risk of not trying to settle it down on Nigeria alone. I mean, Nigeria is not the only African nation at this UNGA. But for the sake of emphasis, let's talk about issues as it relates to Nigeria for the purpose of this discussion today. Now, we understand that as part of the Vice President's itinerary, he's expected to make an announcement of Nigeria's new national and determined contributions under the Paris Agreement, and the updated climate commitments are set to unveil during the special UN event. That's the way Nigeria has contributed in climate, in an attempt to fight issues around climate in the world. So, Professor Buyinami, where is Nigeria and our Vice President in this regard?
Well, taking it from what Mr. Peter Nwangu mentioned,
Derek Nwangu.
Derek Nwangu mentioned about the key departments, key units that you have within the United Nations. Of course, we all know the essence was just to make sure that we have united voice, we have united policy, we have united position against or on any of these units that he mentioned. And the fact that we all know today is that the United Nations, in terms of all the policies, they are not united. Peace will elude the entire world as long as the holders of peace and preachers of peace are not the ones that are fundamentally involved in the establishment of peace in any part of the world. You know, he made mention of the fact that you have 5 permanent members of Security Council. These are the ones that are responsible for the proliferation of weapons, production of different types of instruments that can be used to eliminate individuals or mass destruction of the entire society. And if that is the case, and they feel that no other persons can dictate or veto any decision that they want to hold, automatically peace has to be determined by them as well. And that is why in the entire world, whichever way they decide a society should go, they are the ones that determine that. Even the inhabitants are just at the mercy of these 5 powerful countries. The China, the Russia that are just coming up, they are just there as more or less trying to mitigate the effect of these other countries. There is nothing wrong Nigeria having a permanent, Africa having a permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council, but that will be made difficult. Because even when when Africa has such opportunity, will they have the same veto power that each of these 5 countries has? So if they will be toothless, what will be the essence of being there? They will not be different from sayers in the majority of the General Assembly. Because as you have the General Assembly, 54 countries representing Africa. Other countries are well represented. You look at all the gamut of other countries that are represented, including African leaders. They are just yes sayers or naysayers when it matters most. Now, coming back to the theme that Prof mentioned, you know, you can start talking about better together when you look at all the various indices of the product of certain stands that they take or that they took in the past, they are still taking, that people now start challenging, why are we together if we don't have the same voice? So I feel that may have gingered them to have this kind of theme, better together. It must have challenged the necessity of coming together if we don't have the same voice. What would be the essence? You know, looking at it from the family setting. Yeah. In a family, we're supposed to be to be on the same page on all issues. But when you have someone, maybe by way of being powerful, by way of being vocal, by way of being wealthier than others, now start determining the direction of the entire family. There is no way you have cooperation within such family. Because anywhere in a good family, even the least person in the family should be given the opportunity to voice out his or her own opinion. Yeah. That is not what is happening on the floor of United Nations. So if they now observe that, some that already have like minds, they may start agitating that, why don't we pull out of this so-called unity, where there is no unity? Why don't we also have a way of dealing with ourselves economically, politically? And that's also may have informed the formation of BRICS. That is one. Then
that seems to be another problem.
Yes, yeah. that is one. Because there is no way the entire members of BRICS and people that have the same mindset with them, who are still afraid of what could be the possible consequences of turning their back against the powers that be, they may eventually find a way to have a broader platform to make sure that they start addressing issues globally.
Right. Yeah. All right, Derek Uvango. Now, let us look at it before we take a short break, just some few minutes from now. Now, because one thing that underscores, just as we are trying to examine the theme of this year's edition the issue of asking the question, how united are the countries, the nations at the United Nations? Now, 80 years, we are still talking about the lack of unity among nations at the UN. Now, from your own perspective, what do you think has been the issue? I mean, or the issues these 80 years down the time? What do you think has been the issues?
First of all, the main issue that tend to bedevil the peace and unity of the global states is greed. Greed on the part of the Western nations. They have everything, yet they continue to ensure that every other nation would serve them. They do everything possible to keep other nations who are not in their league down while they continue to go up. You will recall that a country like France, who does not have a single deposit of natural gold on their soil, is among the countries with the highest gold reserves. You know, they've been milking Africa for so long. And you'll be surprised to also note that the main cause of the Second World War was not the popular saying that they keep saying that it was a shot that was heard around the world when the Austrian, I think, Prime Minister was assassinated. No, it was as a result of German insistence that Africa, they should also have their own, cut in the spoils of Africa conquest. You know that the Western nations came, plundered Africa, and they still continue to plunder Africa today. So until every nation of the world, mostly the Western nation, sit down to see how they can develop with their own natural means and also leave Africa to develop in their own accord, there will always be problems. Because currently, because Russia and China have decided to also wake up to have their own fair share of the African loot. Currently, China and Russia has very strong influence in the Sahel states comprising Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. France and other Western nations who are allies, economic allies, are not having it easy currently. China have been able to systematically find their way into the African resources or African mineral wealth or mineral deposit through non-invasive means, through non-confrontational means, but through very subtle means of give and take. So because of that, they did it slowly. And because the Western nation knew that China is strong economically and militarily, it is not very practical for them to confront China. But they see that Russia is coming to join the bandwagon of Chinese exploit in Africa, and this is a problem. So that is what is causing the major issue now on challenges of security in the global scale. Like I mentioned earlier, these 5 nations have the responsibility as trustees of the United Nations to ensure that there is peace, because the core value, the core issue of the United Nations is to ensure that there is peace and unity based on equality, equal relationship in among community of nations. But currently, they are the people that are violating it. And the body as a whole need an overhauling. And part of the key issue here for this body to be able to effectively overhaul itself is to increase permanent membership of the Security Council and ensure that every continent is represented on that Security Council. And to say that the Security Council will, countries like Nigeria will not be able to lend their voice effectively, if Nigeria as a country have one vote, just like every other nations like France, United States, and United Kingdom, then when Nigeria lend their voice in decision making, as it were, and they refuse to obey it, then it will not be very clear that these people have been trading with us.
Yeah, beautiful. Now we'll take a short pause now so that we see the major headlines that we are following at this time. Don't forget the program is still African Discourse, and the 80th edition of the UNGA is what we are looking at today, how African nations are going to benefit from this gathering. We'll be right back. Please stay tuned. All right, thank you one more time. The program is still on your television, African Discourse on independent television. Now we are looking at the 80th anniversary of the United Nations General Assembly that is kick-starting today in New York in America. And we understand that our own Vice President, his presidential aircraft touched down in New York this morning, and he's going to be representing the president in a very huge and big capacity. Now, I'll just go over to Derek Mwango now so that he can bet his points before we come back on set and so that we can attend to some other issues. Now, Derek Mwango, we're looking at United Nations that has countries that are really not united. I mean, 80 years, what has been the problem? Quickly, so that you bet your point.
Like I was saying, the problem of the United Nations as it is today is that the trustees of the United Nations, comprising the 5 permanent members, have not been able to put themselves together to project the UN towards peaceful resolution, and they've not also been able to remove their strong grip on African nations, so the African nations on their own can also thrive. They've been so concerned about, concentrating wealth in their region. So the UN, the main objective of the UN, which is to try to make the world a global village, to make the world like a one-state solution, they've not been able to bring about that one world order. Everybody has always been pursuing its own independent interest, disguising it as a United Nations interest. Like I said, they've been pillaging Africa, taking away our resources, stifling our growth, ensuring that we remain docile while they continue to take our raw materials to develop their own economy. So until they use sincerity, employ, sincere means towards piloting the affairs of the United Nations, the United Nations will continue to remain, a body that is serving the interests of only Europe and America. And if this trend continues, I see a situation where nations will continue, start exiting the United Nations as a body. And you will recall that for the past 2 years, our President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, have not attended. This is the second year that has not attended the General Assembly. I want to see it as a diplomatic move, perhaps to subtly protest the, the inability for the United Nations to absorb a country like Nigeria, the most populated Black nation in the world, so that Nigeria can be a permanent member serving the interests of the African people in the Security Council. So these are part of the issues. Until they open it up for it to truly be a United Nation, I don't think we'll be able to call ourselves a global community.
Points are there. Now, gentlemen on set, perhaps let us begin to look at the flip side of this whole issue. Now, an analyst has said that one of the biggest problems of the 21st century in the world today is President Donald Trump of the United States of America. I mean, we live in a world whereby interest rates, tariff rates has skyrocketed for African nations. I think the list we have in African nations, no one is below 10%, you know, the interest rates for African nations and all that. Now, recently, we've also seen what President Donald Trump is doing to African nations, bundling undocumented migrants from the US to Africa. Now, little wonder if this is going to come up at this assembly, because we are looking at the prospect of what African nations stands to gain in this assembly. Now, how do African nations survive, you know, in all of this? Professor Victor.
Well, in the world, there's inequity. If we are hoping that, oh, one day, these advanced countries will come and make us as advanced as them, we are pursuing a mirage, so to speak. So what we need to do is introspection. We have all the resources. Somebody will say we are the richest in terms of resources in this world, the African continent, and particularly Nigeria too. But we have a mentality of subjecting ourselves, you know, seeing these Western nations as very superior. They may be superior, but they cannot do much without our resources. It's through our resources they use to grow their own economy in their own country. So we are going to reach a point where we have to look inward and begin to grow ourselves. We have to win ourselves. You see, Trump woke up and this United, how they got us that we're always looking for aids from the United Nations. He canceled most of the aids, so you won't get it. So, what do? We are going to have to look inward and grow and groom ourselves. I know that no nation can be self-sufficient, but to a very large extent, we can work within the ambits of our resources and be more independent. The idea of looking at the advanced nations that they will come and make our countries El Dorado is impossible if we don't do things for ourselves. Nobody will do it for you. As I said before, there's inequity in the world. The average human being is a selfish person. So it is what we benefit them that they will do.
All right, so what do you think the African leaders now, how are they going to be addressing? I think Donald Trump may also be at the gathering, or he's also going to be sending his representative, just the way our own president has sent his representative. So for African leaders, how are they going to be addressing these issues, issues that borders on undocumented migrants are taken into the African continent, and of course how Donald Trump is increasing the tariff rate, you know, I mean, it's affecting the continent. So what do you think African leaders should be saying?
That is what I say about inability to remain independent. Donald Trump is a bully, so to speak, and he forces down the throat of the African leaders.
Now, perhaps you may have to render that in a more subtle way now.
Okay. Well, okay. He's very authoritarian.
Okay, from your own perspective, your own opinion about him.
From the world's perspective, not just my opinion. He also does it in his own country, and they are not very comfortable with him. Okay, so you bring migrants to the African countries. They have to take it one way or the other. He will give them a little incentive. And because our people, they don't cherish their independence, they will take it.
That's an allegation, though.
Yes. So
because the last one we saw in Ghana, Mahama Drama, what he said is that these guys are West Africans. I mean, his country, you don't need visa to come to West Africa. That's what he said.
Well, that's the way we look at it.
Okay.
But they are imposed, so to speak.
Anyway, Professor Buyinami, let us also get your perspective on this big challenge in Africa today, because this assembly is supposed to address every and all issues as they are problematic to you as a continent, and perhaps to you people as a nation. So African leaders at the UNGA 80th anniversary.
Well, I would say that in every system, human system, we need peace.
Okay.
And what can actually promote peace, what can sustain peace is justice. And even nature allows that, joins them together. Before you can have stability in every society, the society must be fair, must be just to every inhabitant of such society. So if we are talking from the angle of United Nations, of course, for them to say they want to ensure peace in every corner of the world, they should first look at the issue of justice in all ramifications. If you are there determining the future or the future of a particular society with the background, with the intention that the society must tilt itself towards your own gain, automatically you are not being fair. Now, coming back to the issue of the President of United States of America, of course, the notion is whoever is the President of United Nations of America is the President of the entire world. And they see themselves, I mean, the President sees himself in that capacity. And being at that position, he feels he can call anyone, any country, the President of any country, to dish out instructions to him, or feel that, well, whatever you want to do, you must take yes.
Do you see the UN surviving Donald Trump?
The UN, of course, it's already happening, because we heard that some officials of either Palestine or one of the countries that are supporting Palestinians, he refused them the visa to enter US. Not that they want to go there to do any other thing other than to attend the GA. And that is completely not in consonance.
He refused them visa for this assembly?
Yes, for this assembly.
Just because they are supporting Palestine?
Of course. Of course. It has gone to that extent. So if we now look at him and as someone who has the interest of Africa in mind, you'll be wrong. And you are wrong totally. Because looking at it from this angle again, carrying people whose interest, whose notion, their intention was to be in America, stay in America till thy kingdom come. They have already taken such decision. Taking such individual all in the name of they did not document their movement to America. You now take them to another country entirely, not even their own country. If you take them back to their own country, the indigents of the country will not feel any pain, they will not complain. Just like we said the other time, if you take just 200,000 people, or let's even say 20,000 people to a particular area in Nigeria, and you say you confine them, the population of some villages are not up to half of that. And they are existing as a community. So which means you are already creating a community within a community. Over a period of 50 years, 70 years, they will want to claim ownership of that place. So therefore, you cannot come and say you want to sustain peace and be creating problems that will jeopardize the peace that you feel you want to. But of what reason would that be? Unfortunately, just as he said the other time, the African leaders ought to think beyond the walls, beyond the immediate benefits they gain. There are a majority of them, with all due respect to the sound ones amongst them. The fact that they are there today, some of them may be given incentives to make sure that they sustain these foreigners in quotes on their soil. And if at the end of the day they are no longer in power, the side effects of these people now start manifesting. There is nowhere you go. Just like not too long ago, there was a news that there was an information in the news. A guy was caught among the, armed robbers, or one of these obnoxious activities. He said his father was is Liberian. His mother is a Nigerian. And he was among those that were caught red-handed in the act. So that is the effect of this kind of issue. The guy who said he was born here, he was raised here. So if you now bring such persons, multitude of them, automatically the government, the state government, will have to create an amount of money to sustain them. If the money is created, I mean, it's set aside maybe 1 billion naira, so to speak. It's not the entire 1 billion naira that will go to the sustenance of these people.
Yeah.
So automatically they will become threatened, they will become fearful in the society and start doing all sorts of things to survive.
Okay.
So it will not be to our own advantage at all.
All right, so Derek Onwago, now let us look at something that is also, kind of related to this assembly. Now, the vice president is going to be a part of a debate from tomorrow, whereby participants are supposed to be discussing, letting other nations know the prospect that their nations stands in terms of business opportunities and all that. Now, what are we looking at for our own vice president, President Shettima, and perhaps for other African leaders? Now, what kind of business opportunities do you think they are going to be telling the outer world at this General Assembly?
Our vice president, as at last year when he attended the assembly, he reminded the delegates that the UN is supposed to stand for inclusiveness, which is anchored on peace, sustainable development, and human rights. In terms of economic gains, the VP, even though he gave a very resounding speech the last time, the door that the president of a nation can open with just one hand, if you give the vice president 10 hands, he will not be able to open it, because in international diplomacy, when you send a representation, it weakens your position and your ability to be able to effectively negotiate. So I want to, use this medium to urge our president, even though we know and are aware that he will have a very strong reason for not to have attended the General Assembly for 2 consecutive sessions now. But we are not in the know as to the real reason. But, what the VP can do is to try to see how Nigeria can get debt relief or to renegotiate our current debts to, various...
It's like you're not comfortable with Vice President Shettima as a representative. Now, we're talking about the Vice President of Nigeria. Don't you think he may be as good as the President?
No doubt. His son, like I said earlier, I said he made a very good representation of himself and the nation in the year 2024 General Assembly. He did well. The speech he gave was resounding. But, in diplomacy, it's like sending your son to represent you in a council of elders. We will more or less be there on observatory capacity. But even though our VP, was given the privilege of the president to give a speech, he might not be able to negotiate on a bilateral level. He might not be able to effectively negotiate on a bilateral level, because he will be dealing, we know that there will be a lot of meetings here and there, bilateral relation and agreement, security deal will be signed and what have you. But I can assure you that, he can open a negotiation with other national leaders, but he will not be able to conclude it. He will not be able to conclude in the sense that most of these documents require the president to sign them. So he will not be able to conclude any deal, but he can start a deal and the president can follow up on it. So then there comes the bureaucratic process that will keep the process of negotiation, lingering. So I don't have a problem with VP Shettima, but the diplomatic, international diplomacy
Thank you so much. Now, just 30 seconds
him to
quickly
close
each
the-
as we wrap up. Now, gentlemen, you know, the issue of debt cancellation has been an issue, you know, with the General Assembly, African nations going cap in hand to beg for debt relief and all that. So are we going to be seeing that in this 80th edition? Quickly, 30 seconds quickly.
It's going to be very difficult. There will be no debt cancellation. They know the wealth that we have. Obasanjo did that one. In no time, we are back to square one. We have debt overhang because of mismanagement of resources. And these advanced countries, they know the resources that we have, the revenue that we generate from it. And yet, we are
Professor Buyinami, debt cancellation.
Well, they will always claim they cannot cancel the debt.
And African nations will always go cap in hand.
They will always go cap in hand because of the fact that there is high level of inequality in the negotiation of resources that we have. Because if you look at the depth of resources, the enormous resources that we have in Africa, why don't they give us the opportunity to negotiate how much we want to sell the gold? Because what France did to Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso before was that they will extract their oil, they will mine their gold, come back to pay them pittance.
I'll tell them what they are paying.
And they didn't disclose how much they were selling the gold in the international market.
All right, gentlemen, I want to say a very big thank you for joining. Now, Derek Uwango, I know you would have loved to continue, but because of time, I want to say a very big thank you. Derek Uwango, thank you so much because of time, because we'll have another program in another few minutes. Thank you so much, Derek Uwango. And also, Professor Victor Igbenedion, thank you so much for coming. And for the Deputy Vice Chancellor, University of Benin, Professor Buyinami Adesina Ayinde, I hope I got it well now. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very
It's always
much.
a pleasure.
You're
having
welcome.
you on. All right, so until same time and next week on the same program with another exciting topic. My name is Evan Sunokuge. Good afternoon.